No, it's crazy too. I unfortunately don't play anymore due to an injury, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
it was the right thing. It was one of those like blessing in disguises type of thing. But I spent a lot of time, like doing the musician hustle, right? Like traveling between Philadelphia and New York, like playing
Yeah,
hella late and all this other stuff. And I got to hang out with a lot of people who studied at, places like Juilliard and places like Manhattan School of Music. And
yeah.
it was very bizarre that like in somewhere like Juilliard, where it's like very hoity-toity, very like proper, the people who were teaching but weren't working were the people who were like, oh no, this is all wrong, blah 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 blah. But the people
Dude,
who were
yep.
working and were doing the
Yeah.
stuff like were so supportive, right? Like one of the people that I worked with there uh told me to listen to Biggie. And I grew up, like, I was born in Brazil, but I grew up in like rural Pennsylvania, where it's just like ignorant city. It's
Oh
bigot
shit,
city.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh
yeah.
so I never really listened to hip hop or rap growing up. However, like when I was a musician, this was in like 2013, 2014. Somebody sat me down and was like, "Hey, listen to Biggie." And I was like, "Oh, I don't like that, blah 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 blah." But they were like, "No, just listen to it." And after listening to it and like hearing how complex like the chord structures are to their songs and how like meaningful the songs are, was like a mind-blowing experience, right? So
Yeah.
like hearing something that you aren't expecting to hear, that you are supposed to hate after a while, is like crazy. It like makes you
No, but
question
but
everything.
also it's like a lot of times. So there's two things. Like one, like a lot of times, music is just supposed to be. Music is the most fun and the most impactful when you leave your shit at the door and are just open to stuff.
Yeah.
It just is. Like if you like, and again, there are times where you just want comfort food and the stuff that you like, right? I like mid 2000s hip hop, right? And like early 90s hip hop sometimes. And I like pop music. I do.
Mhm.
And I like Japanese music sometimes. Um but then sometimes, like, if you just leave your shit at the door, you get exposed to a lot of really cool stuff, and all of a sudden you have just this whole other view of how things. One thing that happened was I worked at Apple Music for a little bit, and one of my bosses was like super like into like trying to make sure like Latinx got their shine. And on Apple Music, we promote a lot of Latinx artists or just Latin artists. I'm not gonna say Latinx artists, but a lot of reggaeton, a lot of
Mm.
bachata, like a lot of different stuff. And it was so like listening, because having to make like content for that like for a while was like you kind of got like why it was so hype, right? And why it was so interesting. And it was kind of interesting, like watching people like backlash towards reggaeton, backlash towards that kind of stuff, because you don't really see, like, you're like, why is this aversion? It's very similar to rap. I think even like, and you were mentioning Juilliard. I think what's interesting too about like classical music, especially with like classical musicians, is yeah, a lot of people who are very gatekeepy don't really work all that much. And it's by the way, it's also like it's not even like a talent thing. It's you have a giant block in talent if you're not willing to be open like that. By
Mhm.
the way, that's not me trying to be an asshole. It's just like that's just an industry that everyone knows that. Like unfortunately, but like also when when you are like you're just like kind of a dick to work with. Like people don't like working with those kind of people.
Yeah.
Those people tend to be very, very uh like averse to like social situations and like just getting along and following directions, like being organized with the material and trying to work as a team. Like those people are just very, very averse to that,
Mhm.
or more averse than others. The other thing I will say about that is a lot of that classical music stuff where you are like, oh well, this isn't real music, or you're very like gatekeepy, is kind of antithetical to classical music, because
Mhm.
a lot of the stuff, the like that's Beethoven's whole fucking career.
Yep.
Like that's guys, the guy's whole career was like, because if you've never listened to music before, like in tonal harmony, which is classical music, um, when you're moving, like the whole thing is movement, right? So like when you have like let's say you have the bass note and you have the top note, um, you can't. You're supposed to be going in opposite directions the whole time, And if you do this,
Mhm.
you have like desecrated God and man.
Yep.
Like it's like a huge issue to do because it's called parallel fifths. If you go from
Mhm.
a fifth to another fifth, it's fucked up. So they like at Berkeley they'll give you tests like where you have to like lead a chord structure and you can't fucking do that or you fail. And like that is like that's the only thing you can do. But that shit's all over pop music.
Yeah.
Motherfuckers will do parallel fifths all the fucking time because it sounds good. It sounds cool. You will go from a fifth to a fifth, and like Beethoven would do that shit. Beethoven would do shit that you're not supposed to do because he's just like, fuck you. I don't give a shit. This is the romantic era. I'm going to do whatever I want. And like a lot of that stuff is disruptive because it changes the way you look at music. Jazz, the existence of jazz itself is just a giant disruption of music.
Mhm.
It's chromatic. It has rhythms that you're not supposed to play. It is where all the liquor and the fucked up things are. You know, if you lived in the 20s,
Yeah.
learning about music, I just felt like a lot more like self-esteem with myself, like for being into hip hop, because I just kind of realized like it's a panic that doesn't make any fucking sense.
Right.
And it'll get out, it'll die. And largely, you know, most people who are serious kind of understand this at this point. And everybody, like everything on the Mortal Kombat video, anytime I see somebody who's like, what's this crap? And they like capitalize art, like Ray can't spell crap without rap.
Yeah.
It's like 30 followers. It's not, I can't like reasonably take it seriously anymore. Like after everything I've fucking done in the last years.
Yeah. So yeah. So it's funny you mentioned the parallel fits because a teacher of mine, theory teacher of mine, used to always say like every time you write parallel fifths, Bach kills a puppy. Which is so stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah. And
Mozart snorts a line of coke or something. I don't know.
Exactly. But like, you know, like